In this intense and dramatic match between Siong and Carlsen, we are reminded of the importance of patience, careful planning, and mental endurance. Carlsen, one of the strongest players in the world, faced a series of strategic challenges that forced him to make tough decisions, eventually leading to his resignation. The lesson we can all take from this game is that sometimes, even the best players must face difficult realities, like Carlsen avoiding the bitter truth of playing defensively early on, which could have changed the outcome. Siong's ability to remain calm and calculate precise tactics under pressure shows us the power of composure in competition. He used every opportunity to maximize his position and pressure Carlsen from all sides, exploiting even the smallest mistakes to create powerful attacks. Carlsen's brilliance lay in his resourcefulness, but in this match, it wasn't enough to counter Siong's relentless strategy. This game is a perfect reminder to all of us that in chess, as in life, we must balance aggression with caution, know when to defend, and sometimes embrace the difficult choices to avoid larger losses. The way Siong seized control of the board shows how preparation and a clear vision can lead to victory, no matter how formidable the opponent.
Thank you for watching.
Can Carlsen, with all his experience, hold on to the throne? Or will Siong finally break through his defenses and deliver a shocking defeat this time? The game starts calmly. Siong chooses the d4 opening, one of the most solid and flexible choices. Carlsen responds with knight to f6, a well-known Indian defense. Siong plays c4, and Carlsen follows with g6, setting up the fianchetto for his bishop. After c3 from Siong, Carlsen immediately fianchettos his bishop. Carlsen has entered the king's Indian defense, often used to build a strong rook formation around the king. But Siong is undeterred. He grabs the center with e4, aiming to control vital areas early on. Carlsen knows this will be a battle of deep strategy and precision. The game continues with bishop to e2, and Carlsen castles kingside. Siong develops his bishop to e3, followed by Carlsen's knight to c6. Siong shows aggression by pushing his pawn to d5, forcing Carlsen to think hard. Carlsen responds with knight to e5, a classic move trying to disrupt White's central dominance, but Siong remains unfazed. Then comes f4, a clear sign of Siong's intent. He wants to attack, opening pathways for his pawns to march forward and initiate an assault on Carlsen's position. Carlsen retreats his knight to d7, trying to save it and maintain flexibility on the board, but this move seems passive, making future decisions harder if Siong stays patient. Here, Carlsen avoids choosing knight to g4 because he believes it would lead to a frightening situation. He thinks there would be a force sequence that would trap the knight on h6. I've mentioned this several times before. If he had chosen a closed variation from the start, he wouldn't have had to face this reality. In such a case, White would need to avoid the knight's threat. c3 would control the center, forcing the knight to h6, followed by a g4 pawn push. Carlsen is not unaware of this position, but he changed his mind. He might have thought he could handle the pressure, but these are two different variables. Based on his experience, Carlsen should have played a closed, defensive game at first, waiting for Siong to attack. The concept involves two opposing variables. This idea has also been documented in chess books. You might be aware of it if you've read a lot of chess literature. The second concept deals with a different theory. For example, if White chooses to have the bishop capture the knight, it would be a blunder because trading the light-squared bishop for a knight is not favorable. Both players know this, which is why Carlsen avoided knight to g4, fearing his knight would end up trapped on h6. Let's proceed. After a knight capture, a bishop on d4 prevents Black's fianchettoed bishop from dominating the long diagonal. After the bishop exchange on d4, followed by e5 controlling the center, White accepts the exchange. As a result, Black not only has a bishop, but also gains a half-open file. Carlsen believes this won't happen, but his mistake lies in avoiding the bitter reality, thinking he doesn't want to be on the defensive. That's what we're discussing. His knight ends up trapped on h6. Now let's go back. After reaching this position, Siong decides to develop his knight to f3. Carlsen tries to control the center with e6. A pawn exchange takes place in the center, and Carlsen appears ready to rebuild his defense, but Siong has deeper plans. With knight g5 and queen e7, Siong decides to castle. Carlsen tries to strengthen his position on the queen side with b6, but Siong immediately pressures him with bishop f3, threatening black's pawns and inviting more complications. Carlsen moves his rook in anticipation of Siong's attack along the long diagonal. Queen to c2 and bishop to b7 counter each other. Siong proceeds with rook e1, invading the center. Carlsen expands with a5, trying to extend his reach. The tension grows as Siong presses Carlsen from all sides, preparing for a kingside attack, while Carlsen tries to create counterplay on the queen side. But will that be enough? We'll see. After Siong moves his king to h1, he starts getting careless, wasting time pushing his pawns forward. In a position like this, friends, you should already be pushing the f5 pawn. After the pawn exchange, threats arise all over the board. Even if there's a light-squared bishop exchange, white would gain control of the g and e files, putting pressure on the g6 pawn. For instance, if rook moves to the e file, the bishop maneuver forces the queen to move, followed by pawn captures. This position favors Siong for a win. But Siong missed this chance. Let's go back. Carlsen moves his knight to c5, provoking a bishop-knight exchange. Siong makes a strategic trade, opening up more space for an attack and forcing Carlsen to fight on every corner of the board. Finally, Siong realizes it's time for a decisive f5. Carlsen's response doesn't meet expectations. He declines to capture the f-pawn and chooses e5 instead. However, this locks in his dark-squared bishop, a serious mistake. As I mentioned before, the fianchettoed bishop is now restricted. It would have been better for Carlsen to accept the bitter reality by capturing the f5 pawn, as the transposition would have been more manageable, as I explained earlier. Moving on, after Siong plays knight to e6, he controls a vital square, which is hard for Carlsen to contest. Carlsen moves his rook to f7, followed by g4, and Carlsen decides to exchange pawns. Carlsen sacrifices his pawns brilliantly, but Siong remains calm. Both players engage in a battle of intense tactics and psychology. Carlsen knows he must avoid the looming checkmate, but space is running out. The game continues. A bishop exchange on f3, Carlsen captures on g4, and rook to g1 increases the pressure on the king side. Queen h4 supports the knight, while defending along the g-file. Carlsen tries to hold on with h5, but this blunder only worsens his position. Although there are temporary solutions like e4 and f4 to pressure the knight, h5 followed by knight and bishop exchanges, along with pawn to f6 and rook to g6, would still leave Carlsen struggling to withstand the pressure. After knight e4, Carlsen captures a pawn, but Siong's rook swings back to attack the queen, providing support for the knight. Carlsen moves his queen to g4, offering a queen trade. Siong exchanges pieces on favorable terms. At this point, Siong trades queens, keeping the pressure on Carlsen's bishop. Carlsen tries to check with his rook, but king g2 defends. After rook to f7 supports the bishop, knight to f6 delivers a crushing check. On move 31, Carlsen resigns at Siong's hands. Siong wins, as if Carlsen's rook captures the knight. Checkmate will follow. Siong has defeated one of the world's strongest players in a game filled with drama and emotion. This is a prime example of how careful strategy, composure, and lethal tactics can bring down even the toughest opponents. Don't miss more epic chess analyses on this channel. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss an update.